Thank you for joining me for another episode of Wake and Empower TV. I'm your host, Ethann Fox. I'm joined today by Laurie McDonald, an extraterrestrial contactee and clinical hypnotherapist who has done an immense amount of research into extraterrestrial contact through her own experiences and the experiences of her various patients. She shares with us today what she's learned from that and some of the different interesting stories that have occurred as well. We also delve into the Mandela Affect, which has come into our conscious awareness in recent years, and how that has manifested in our reality, and what the impacts are on our collective consciousness and dimension as we go forward into the future. So without any further delay, here's Laurie McDonald. Hi, Laurie. Thank you for joining me. It's a pleasure to meet you finally, and you're a very interesting person, so I'm looking forward to having a conversation with you. So where are you calling us from today?
Right now, I'm at my home in Sacramento, California.
Okay, great. Well, I want to start by, for those of our viewers who are unfamiliar with you and your work, if you can tell us a little bit about your past history and anything that you've done, any educational background that has carried you from your former life in a more mainstream world, probably, to the things that you're doing now.
I studied some psychology and social behaviors. I was thinking in my youth that I might like to be a psychiatrist. But when I actually looked at the program, it didn't feel right with me. And all of a sudden, hypnotherapy opened up to me. Now, mind you, I'd already been a meditator for about 12 years. And at that point, I had a pretty good understanding, at least how my mind worked. So I thought that it was contrary to what they might be teaching. And I thought that hypnosis could sort of bypass the critical mind and move into the heart of matter, providing accelerated heat. I didn't think that they needed to sit around for 10 years telling somebody else instead of receiving information, which is why I believe they go to therapy to begin with. So I became a clinical hypnotherapist and have been having a pretty good private practice ever since. I was about 25 years ago. I operate True You Hypnotherapy in Sacramento. I am the founder and facilitator of Sacramento Alien Abduction and Contactee support group. And it is a support group where we meet to discuss our extraterrestrial experiences and, more importantly, the effects it has on our consciousness and what it might hold for the future of mankind even. So we see that we are evolving and we can feel that. I recently was nominated for the president of the organization Opus, where I had been a board member in good standing. And I did accept that position, and it's a true honor to be with such an organization with a plethora of scientific backgrounds to help me, either doctors, lawyers, surgeons for extraterrestrial implant removal, whatever is necessary. So I'm really pleased to take this nonprofit organization and see exactly what I can do with it. In conjunction to that, I am one of 27 therapists on the MUFON mental health referral list for alien abduction, where I'm also a scientific consultant to the research committee for the organization FREE, the Edgar Mitchell Foundation for Research into Extraterrestrials. I have a dual path with them where I'm also part of their support coalition, providing support for experiencers. And geez, I think that's enough.
Now, is there a distinction? I've had a number of other contactees and on my show in the past. Can you tell me from your own experience and working with patients, do you make a distinction between a contactee and an abductee?
Absolutely. Two different types of energy, different types of extraterrestrials are involved. Now, depending on the race of beings, they're agenda-oriented or they are not. So an abduction, since by definition it is taken against one's will, we see that as a more negative or frightening. To me, though, just want to clarify that all extraterrestrial experiences, whether they're blissful, awe-striking experiences or fear-based experiences, should be used as a catalyst to challenge reality, what you believe to be true or false in your environment, and then used again as a catalyst to expand your consciousness. Ultimately, any paranormal or anomalous activity, anything that's knocking on the door of the superconscious mind, is a wake-up call. We are in changing times. We are at a historical, monumental time in history for multiple reasons. One being that the patriarch is subsiding as the matriarch and the divine feminine energy begins to step into balanced power. So we're going to feel the energy shift, and people will begin to hopefully behave higher minded, thinking higher, acting higher, doing higher minded things, understanding that our thoughts have power. Words can change your DNA, that we are responsible, sentient beings, but we are human. And hue is, the word hue is short for the way we measure the saturation or intensity of light, hue. Man is short for manifestation, to come into the physical or to be embodied. The word human is simply a definition for the type of entity that we are. And when you know what you are, you have a better idea of why you're here and what exactly the program is all about. So the human experience with extraterrestrial is equal. I see that a lot of experiencers, whether they're contactees or abductees, begin to give their power away, thinking that a superior being is in contact with them and that they must comply or relinquish power, personal power, where it's really not like that at all. And it certainly shouldn't be. When we're moving into these energies, we're tapping into more senses than our standard 5 or 6 senses. Neurologists tell us that we have up to 19 senses. So imagine just for a minute, if we push the mind out, moving up and out of the mind, sort of tapping into the third eye area, where we literally have a 360-degree perspective of situations, and we are etheric in these moments without a body. We really begin to move into the stream of consciousness where we can reflect why the experience is happening to people. Yeah, contactees often just receive messages. They're told, do this or do that. Well, I'm going to be straight with you here. We are living in the 21st century in a time of technology where radio wave, microwave, psychotronics, sonar, radionics, all of these voice to skull, these are transmissions that can beam words or thoughts right into your mind. We have to understand there is a protocol, and we need to learn how to differentiate between our voice and a voice that might be being sent through psychotronics. It's very important that at this time in history, we begin to move on to the path of self-acceptance and self-love. When we're in that energy of loving and acceptance, understanding we're on this planet of duality, there's good and bad, there's everything in between. But when we sort of practice equanimity, the ability to remain calm during chaos, we can see both sides and feel still empowered without feeling inferior or superior, where we need to challenge somebody or defend ourselves. You see, this is truly the way to peace. We have this self-acceptance and love, and it automatically is like a domino effect, and it puts us on this beautiful path of personal development, and then self-mastery of this development, and then further self-actualization, living the life that you're meant to live, having this three-dimensional experience. It's a spiritual experience, and it's very important. And I see that in the extraterrestrial phenomena, it is continuously undervalued as to what it can really do for humanity.
So would you consider yourself primarily a contactee or an abductee or a little bit of both?
Well, I've been both, but it was only through finding my personal power through the abduction phenomena that I was able to control it. I have since learned over the decades that have passed. I've done a lot of research, worked with thousands of experiencers, and I've created some psychological profiling on extraterrestrials, specific extraterrestrials, at least the 5 that are involved in the abduction phenomena, so that a person knows how to be psychologically prepared for such an encounter, to prevent or stop the encounter, because I do believe they have the ability to manipulate the theta and the delta brainwave, creating or simulating the sleep state where we feel like this absence of time, and we just sort of are compliant, going through with it, not really thinking that we can say, no, or what's really happening here. So we're not fully conscious or lucid. We're not in that beta brain where we can say, hey, there are ways to tap into that during such phenomena so that you're back in control of the situation, so that you're not feeling abducted. Because realistically, when we're talking about an abductee, depending on who it is, if it's a reptilian abduction, then we're probably looking at a lot of fear-based psychological testing. If it's within the gray agenda, tall grays or short grays, then most likely we're looking at the hybridization program and the accumulation of genetics for that through ovum and sperm to create such hybrids. And I believe that there's a very good likelihood that that may be happening. And I'm also going to say right now that without one's expressed permission, this is forbidden. It's absolutely forbidden. They don't have that right to do so. And what I see happening a lot, I hear it in the support group and in my private practice, that people are having sexual relations with extraterrestrials. Again, wrong. Completely inappropriate. This is not the idea. This is a manipulation of energy and shouldn't be done. So there's a lot of education that needs to take place in a way that doesn't allow fear. It really needs to come from a place of community, unity, and personal power. And personal power is something that isn't, wielded. It's something that's very subtle and sensed. It's something that we all have an opportunity to step into.
So share with me some of the, and I'm sure you've had a lot of experiences, but maybe some of the more, or one of the most fascinating experiences you had with extraterrestrial contact or abduction.
I will. I'll tell you what, Ethan. After some extraterrestrial abduction scenarios that I had gone through in my early 30s, I was still on my path of understanding. And I actually had come to a point of understanding. I'd done a lot of emotional work. I did a lot of inner child work. I had been meditating for a very long time and started to run into some issues. Each and every time I would move into meditation, I would have out-of-body experiences. And I know a lot of people, that's their desire, but that certainly wasn't mine. So that night, after just being fed up with having come out of my body one more time and not really knowing where to go or how far I could go, but certainly knowing here I was, fully aware, totally Laurie, but outside of my body. So what did I learn? I learned that I existed outside of my body. I truly could see that I was simply the consciousness. So that night, I went to bed and I had a very lucid dream about this modest Vietnamese temple. I saw everything, all of the monks. The next morning, upon awakening, I went through my regular duties, dropped my son off at kindergarten. He's 30 now. And went for a ride out in the countryside and miles outside of town, there it was. There was this temple that I had dreamed about. So I drove in and parked the car and walked up to these big iron gates, and the gates were partly open, and there were two female monks standing there. And they said, "How did you know about us?" And I said, "I dreamed you." And at that, they said, "Oh, please, please come in." So I began meditating there and probably explaining my situation to the master. She gave me some tips. I stayed for years learning how to do that. And I'll tell you, I learned more about extraterrestrials and other worlds from the Buddhist monks than I've learned from the 1,000 experiencers that I've interviewed. But after receiving some training with them, I had felt really good. You know, life was great. I thought I had everything under control. Couldn't be going better. I'm walking down the hall in the evening with the laundry basket sort of hooked on my hip, picking up clothes, taking care of the children's laundry, and I heard my name called out. I heard my name called 3 times and could focus my consciousness to where I saw the silhouette of 3 of a violet, sort of almost like a fluorescent violet, the most beautiful, bright yet soft color, and just an amazing color. And their voices were so high, like spinning, such a high voice. The frequency was so high, and they said, "Laurie," and I'm looking right at them, and they said, "You passed." I said, "I passed." Oh, geez, you know, and I hung my head and thought, wow, I died. I don't know how that happened. What happened? And they're like, no, no, you didn't die. You passed. I said, "Oh, I see." And then they said, "Are you afraid?" I said, "No, I've been waiting for you all of my life." I didn't know I was going to say that, but it was totally my truth. I said, "I've been waiting for you all of my life." And they said, will I come with them? And I did. And in that moment, I began to ascend up into space through layers. I could feel layers of space. And at one point, I was halted and stopped, and there was another energy in front. And it felt like it evaluated or judged me somehow, but it allowed me to continue. And I broke out freely into space, and I looked down. You know, I was in like a spiral of purple energy or violet energy. And when I'd come out of it and broke into space, I looked down to see where my arms and legs were, and there were only stars, planets, and between my own eyes were like light years. It's true, there were light years between my eyes. And again, I say to these beings, I said, I'm still Laurie. I'm still Laurie. How could this be? Still thinking, this is too much. I must be dead. But there, Ethan, in the distance, I saw a golden planet. And as my desire was to be there, I moved as I was thinking, and I was there. I could sense the energies, the lower, middle, higher. I could see things. And they had told me that was like a little bit further than I was supposed to be going at the moment. And, you know, I should go back now. And I had refused and said, yeah, I don't think so. This is great. But I know the further, in retrospect, the further I got away from myself, the least I could remember, I forgot I had children. I knew I was Laurie, but I didn't know I had kids. They were gone out of my thinking. And then they said my daughter's name. They said Mandela, and at that vibration of her name, I began to descend. And they spoke my son's name and brought me back to where I was. And I just said, you know, please come back. And 3 nights later, they did come back, and I experienced more. So out of all of the extraterrestrial experiences, that by far is the most, because I learned so much. And, you know, I went in thinking I was okay and had an idea of the universe, and boy, did I get a wake-up call. I knew nothing. I knew nothing, and I was just a child of the universe, like in the kindergarten of the cosmos or something, and been learning ever since. Now it's been decades, like I said, but I do see people who have similar experiences, but not quite the same. But they're left with the same question that I was. And for almost 2 years, I was like, who are they? Are they angels because it's so beautiful? Or are they aliens? And then after 2 years, I was like, you know what? It doesn't matter if they were angels or aliens. It doesn't matter. What matters is my reality was challenged. My consciousness was expanded. I had a reflection of what could be and will be. And with that, I felt that was enough for me. I didn't need to waste any more time running around in my mind, worrying, was it this or that? Because I had come to the conclusion that worrying was very much like being in a rocking chair. Go back and forth, but you never really get anywhere. So I had stopped that activity and moved into further research, and certainly into helping people who were moving through that transition of understanding. It's growing pains, whether the experience is good or bad. We do fret, and there is a level of suffering until we gain insight.
Do you categorize that as a contact experience or an abduction experience?
Oh, well, I went willingly. They asked my permission and they called me by name. That's a contact experience. They don't call you by name. They could care less about you. You are a specimen. That's it. Whether they convince you that your DNA is so important that it's going to revive or save a whole race, totally a manipulation. It is not true. It is not true. It is a manipulation. So yeah, you can tell by the protocol, how we're approached, how they speak to us. It's a level of love and respect. And what I felt during that experience was unconditional love, vibrated through my essence more than I'll ever be able to articulate. I won't have or find the words in this lifetime to express what that true, specific freedom was like, and to feel that overwhelming, unbelievable, unconditional love, and then see this golden planet. And I knew that it was a new home. I knew things just by seeing it. It's like I felt it was our higher path. It was the golden home that we all have heard about at one point or another through different cultures, beliefs, and mythologies.
How many people are experiencing this kind of phenomenon in the world, do you think? Do you have any actual data on that?
You know, I had some data a few years ago, and it was looking like it was about 280 million people had reported an experience worldwide. That's based like about a 4% value system of the world population. So the number's really up there. Now, like I said, I run a pretty large group of experiencers, and several times throughout the year, because there's so many new people coming all the time, I'll ask, how many here have actually reported your experience? Maybe 1 or 2 out of 30. The numbers are inaccurate. There was a huge push for people to suppress their truth, to not believe the experience was actual. If you went to a doctor, you were given drugs to maybe stop you from seeing things. It's really funny, you know, people will go and tell their doctor, oh, I've seen this, or saw a UFO, or seen some extraterrestrials, I've had some experiences. And they'll say, oh, wow, you must be schizophrenic. Well, the guy's like 40. You don't get schizophrenia at 40 years old, you know. there's got to be another way for people to explore what's happening. But the biggest thing about the extraterrestrial phenomena is that we are not alone, that there are dual types of energy, specifically two main energies, that are creating an interference, so to speak, with our planet. And it is time for us to sort of wake up and move into an understanding, becoming aware of the realities, maybe checking in with ourselves. We have to really stop looking externally for all the answers. Again, if we do this, we're like a dog chasing their tail. I mean, with all the answers are inside. If you look outside, it's going to be a shotgun blast. There's a million different avenues, but only one inside. And no matter what path you're on the inside, it's the right path. There's no mistaking where you should be at that point. But I do think people need more support groups like I run and other people. I think that our communities can really benefit from that. Even on this awakening, people awaken to things that are happening on the planet. It actually causes stress, causes some mental disturbance, even the Mandela Affect. I didn't take any of it seriously till I actually saw somebody suffer. When I saw people suffering, I realized in that moment that is not the normal reaction to a mismemory. People don't have a little meltdown because they made a mistake. No. So that's not how memory works. So when I see that people suffer for certain information, we really need to get out there and support each other and help us through it so that they can just, you got to break a few eggs to make an omelet. And so when you get new information, it can become chaotic. But again, there are steps, protocols that you can follow to ease your way through it without causing too much harm to the mind and body.
Now, when you say two main energies, are you talking about benevolent and malevolent, or is it something else?
No, straight up. Yeah, that's correct.
And now, there's a lot of talk these days, and obviously in the various conferences you attend and people I speak to on my show, about extraterrestrial contact and when is it coming. Is what you're talking about now, is this actually extraterrestrial contact that's occurring now? Or is there something coming in the future that's going to look different?
No, there's multiple types of beings, just like there's multiple types of humans. We have all types. It depends on what their agenda is. We see people who say they have relationships with Arcturians or Pleiadians or Nordics or Reptilian or Mantis. And, we really need to start defining these relationships, understanding what they are, breaking down the data, and creating commonalities so that we can do these psychological profiling so that we know how. A lot of the extraterrestrial activity that has to do with the gray aliens, I don't even think they're aliens. I think at this point in my research that they actually qualify as jinn or demons. They have a lower energy and they are self-serving. And that's primary difference. If the extraterrestrial is self-serving and can hurt you, and I do believe they've caused me physical harm. I know they caused me some mental disturbance for a while as well, fear. So, as well as, millions of other people. So it's how they act. And I think that they're harmful, they hurt without thought or care. That qualifies for a demon. When we open ourselves up to the possibility that there are angels in the celestial realm, then we have to be open to the fact that there then are demons. So it's interesting, we hear of the archons, the parasitic extraterrestrials that are technology based. They have very little power other than technology, but we can see now that technology can put words in your mind and change your behavior, change your mood, manipulate or mind control you. So that's the type of technology that they bring. Is that really anything that we desire? Does that serve the highest purpose of humanity? When the answers are no, 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 then no, we don't have any type of relationship with anything that will bring our energy down. See, we're on the path of ascension. NASA scientists will tell us that the third dimension as we know it is slipping away, that we are in fact moving into the fourth dimension, which will be very short-lived. For humanity, what this means is we have an opportunity to self-correct. When we feel dis-ease in the mind or body, we have the opportunity to consciously self-correct, changing our own personal frequency and vibration through breath, through thought, through a proactive mind is what we desire to be. So we have that. So when we feel this discomfort, we have to learn how to control our energy. We have to let go of a lot of things that no longer serve us. And we have to move through that forgiveness, acceptance process, the awakening process, that fourth dimension, because we'll have instant manifestation of our thoughts. Thoughts can't be bad, or that's what we'll get. So then we'll begin to move into that higher fifth dimension, where it is a higher frequency. It's the path of ascension. It's the way home. We're just a reflection of all that is, gaining experience and then bringing it back. It's like a universal inhale and exhale. And we're just the process of experiencing all that there is. And when we feel truly that humanity can evolve this way and we can be proactive in doing so, then it's time to let go of words like karma and begin to move into words like dharma, where we take full responsibility and we accept and become teachers instead of having to tit for tat, repeat and learn all of these lessons. You can put yourself on an accelerated learning path of love and balanced forgiveness. This is sort of the way onto the ascension path. It's important, again, a monumental time in history. You know, when I say that the matriarch or the divine feminine energy is rising, this is a fact. You know, in the Dark Ages, say 500 to 1000, and particularly around the year 600, where there were, you know, medieval torture chambers and so forth, the Dark Ages, they were called that for a reason. In the cosmology of the universe, the planet Earth was as far away from the sun as possible. The solar radiation that can activate perhaps DNA or dormant DNA was stretched. As we are moving on the ascension upwards path, we're getting these radiations and moving energies. It's a real thing. So I think the more people realize that there is both a spiritual science, so to speak, that we can come together with these thoughts, we'll be able to move collectively.
Are you finding that the majority of, at least from your research, extraterrestrials that have made some sort of contact with human beings are more benevolent, or are there more malevolent beings out there that are interacting with us?
Well, that's kind of a hard question because I run a support group. It's people who are affected generally in a negative way. So if I went just on that, it wouldn't look too good for us. But the truth is, I think that all experiences will be up to us. So it doesn't matter what the extraterrestrials are, they're benevolent or not. It doesn't matter. What matters is how we choose to react or interact with them. You see, we have to take responsibility. And if we're in the presence of extraterrestrial that is negative, then we choose not to engage. You see, our energies we have to have resonance. We have to harmonize with them to have interaction. that exists in us, you see, the duality of humanity. There's good and bad in all of us, so it's up to us to consciously choose this higher way of thinking. You know, and there are so many beautiful, loving stories of altruistic entities that are coming here to save us. And I appreciate that. But as a parent and a grandparent, I realize that the best thing we can do for our children is to make them self-sufficient. So what I'm saying is we don't need to be saved. We will save ourselves. And if we cannot save ourselves, then we will start over and relearn. And it's okay. It's really okay. So I don't understand these extraterrestrial messages, or when they come in and or channel information that say, you know, don't pollute, or there's too many people on the planet and you're going to hurt your natural resources and so forth. No. I'm skeptical, healthily skeptical of such things, because we are fully capable of taking care of ourselves when we choose to. It's not out of the reach to think that we can create a desalinization plants and agriculture in areas that are deserts, such as places in Africa. It isn't hard at all to create a desalinization plant and grow food. In any way, there's enough resources on the planet as there are right now for everybody. Its problem is distribution, that some have too much and some have too little. So the extraterrestrials are not viewing the situation from the human perspective. If they're looking at it saying, oh, you don't have enough resources, you have to do some type of population control, I don't think so at all. There's lots of room left on the planet, and we have the ability to take care of ourselves. It's distribution of resources. So it makes me think that maybe they're slightly misinformed. So then we hear them giving us advice on this or that. All wonderful. But this often comes as channeled information, and we get, once again, unless you understand the protocol, how do you know where that voice is coming from? That's a very important question. Very important question. So you need to be able to verify that, because an extraterrestrial is going to send a telepathic message, you know, across space or through a dimension that says, hey, yeah, there's too many people on your planet, you know, cut back there. That's somewhat illogical to me. So I do see, though, that there is evidence that extraterrestrials have stopped us from having nuclear meltdowns, that even in the Second World War, they intercepted some planes, Foo Fighters, they called them at the time. And so seemingly they look like they're doing something good. We notice that whenever there's an earthquake, there is a high amount of UFO sightings in that area prior to and right after the earthquake. So some say they're helping, some say maybe they did that. I don't know. And I'll be the first to tell you, of all the research that we do, what do we know? Not much, okay? What we have are commonalities, a lot of opportunity to speculate, but we really don't know until we experience for ourselves that sort of face-to-face, eye-to-eye contact with an extraterrestrial, and then what does it mean with you? You see, there are many people, there are many extraterrestrials, we're all on different paths. All going to the same place, just at a different place on the path. And each person's experience is different, and each person's experience is extremely valid and important. My personal beliefs with the extraterrestrials are kind of like the ancient Gnostics, where there is no good or bad. There just is. And what we derive from it, what we learn from it, and how we apply that to the betterment of our people is what counts. That's the way I think that we should look at the situation. when we begin saying good and bad, we are creating division once again. And I think that it's not really about division. It's because it takes us out of the equation. I think it's more like we need to look at the situation and have a larger acceptance and choose how we want it to be. I think that we're magnificent manifestors. And a lot of this UFO action might even be brought by some of us. That when we're out there and we desire to see a UFO, we're looking for one. Why is it that we see one? And we do a lot of sky watches within the group. We'll go out to a dark area outside of the city lights with the appropriate equipment for night vision goggles and so forth. And do we see UFOs? Yeah, absolutely. We see UFOs. Are they there? Have they been there probably all along? Most likely. Another question, why is there so many here? I think that might be just simply a location as to where we are in the cosmos, that we might be near a entry or a portal near the sun, a place to move into a different dimension. A Stargate, really. So I think that it's just location. Lucky us. So we have all of these different types of ETs. They're lining up out there waiting for their Stargate and might as well come down and check out the locals.
I've heard you say that the people at different geographic parts of the world have contact with different races of extraterrestrials. Is that just simply because each geographic area has a different vibration, or because different races are connected to different types of consciousness?
All of that, for sure. And I also think that it also has to be a religious and cultural beliefs of people as to how they interpret the situation. Some might say, oh, it's a tall, blonde angel, very religious person. Some might say the tall person was a Nordic, a Pleiadian. So if you're in Europe, you might say Nordic or a Pleiadian. If you're in Italy, you might think that you saw an angel. So if you're in South America, they tend to see more, they see a lot of UFOs, but the entity themselves seem to be more cryptozoid. So North America was definitely the great agenda, up to reptilians. The United Kingdom, they have their mantis. So I think that it has a lot to do with cultural beliefs also, as not just location, but I think location is really good. So you can imagine, say in Holland or something, an extraterrestrial that would need to vibrate at that specific Stargate might naturally take on the appearance of the people in the area to fit in a little bit better. The ones that can't raise their vibration to that of a light embodied entity like a human may just come through as grays or zetas or others.
So they could be any particular race, or just appearing to us in something that's familiar or comfortable.
Yes, I do believe they do that, since they can shapeshift and seemingly dematerialize. Yes, they can rematerialize in a different form. I think that sometimes they do that to soothe the person, to not frighten them, which is respectful. Up near Lake Titicaca in Peru, lots of extraterrestrials there, lots of UFO sightings. The local people up there just don't even think twice about it. It's been going on for centuries, and to them it's like us seeing a bus, not a big deal. So perspective certainly is different. Here in America, it's like you have a UFO experience or whatever, it's don't talk about it. Nobody talks about it. Is there a UFO presence in the United States? Sure. Is there an extraterrestrial presence on the planet? I'm going to say most definitely. Why are we not supposed to talk about it? That's a strange thing to me. But it's, again, illogical.
Do you have any evidence that might explain why there are so many different kinds of races in the world that look dramatically different? Is there any sort of a extraterrestrial genetic history to that?
Well, just my own research here, what I've noticed is that they all seem to be drawn out of our own biology, that we have the grays that look like ants or insectoids. We have the mantis, named that because they look like a praying mantis. And every being that we see, tall, gray, tall, white, all seem to represent something within our own biology. So I do find that rather curious. Not sure why. I mean, why aren't they completely different? I mean, why have the looks of a insect, a praying mantis, say? All of those things exist within our biology. So yeah, interesting. I'm not sure exactly where to go with it. I'm not sure how far I can take that.
I meant specifically the human races. We have a Caucasian, an African American, an Asian. Is there any evidence that explains why that could have been? Could it have been a genetic manipulation at some point, or do you have anything that references that?
Humans genetically are different in that way because we are products of our environment. So the Asian people have slanted eyes. They were nomadic, crossing deserts constantly. Winds are blowing. They adapted to that. Our African race is an intense sun. They have a higher pigmentation, which acts as a natural block. So we see that our Inuit people from the Yukon area have a much thicker skin, or layers of fat, I should say, not skin, but blubber, for insulation. We're products of our environment. So that's why we look different. White people actually come from the Caucasus Mountain range, and all of this leads to our more specific genetics, like hair color and eye color. We see that people with brown eyes often are blood type O, for instance, generally meat eaters. Why? Because they came from a low vegetation, high meat eating area. So we're products of our environment. So the human body, totally amazing. And the spirit too, though, don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong at all, because there's nothing we can't move through. But it's very interesting to find that our bodies actually will adjust to the environment.
Is there a primary purpose for why abductions are occurring? Is it simply for genetic experimentation and to prolong their own genetic existence, or are you finding a number of reasons?
I think that there's probably a number of reasons. We have come to some tentative conclusions, such as the taller grays live to be 800, 900, or 1,000 years old. We know that we have genetics within the family being observed as generational. So that sort of makes sense. If one gray is 1,000 years old, then he probably is going to have to see 5 or 6 or some generation of your family to get a good understanding of your specific DNA and how your DNA reacts to certain things. So we do see that we know that they're generational, and we know that they're harvesting genetics. I do think it's for a hybridization program. I think that hybridization program for them is to create more of a working race, or a slave race, you might say. I also see that some people they believe that the hybrids are super strength. So do we. We have super strength when our adrenaline is all geared up. We can lift a vehicle with one arm while pulling out to somebody with the other. Lots of these feats have been recorded over time. We see that the human being has the ability to move into super strength, where clarity of mind is, it's almost like you're thinking before you're thinking, like you feel the energy before the thought comes. And when you're in that energy, you are tapping into that higher aspect of us. So I think that as we're evolving and we begin to control our own adrenaline, where we can turn on this super strength, can you see that we would have to be very responsible in order to be able to control that particular secretion of hormone, so we have to sort of earn it, deserve it, that superpower that lies within all of us. We have to be able to practice equanimity. We have to have emotional control. These are things that are important right now, and we do that by sort of moving inside of ourselves, looking for it. Huge advocate of meditation because it does increase the gamma brainwave. It really helps us. It calms us. It makes our thoughts clear. It oxygenates our blood. It allows us to think and act from that higher perspective. This is what I mean by being proactive with your own thoughts, your own mind, your own body. The mind controls the body and the body obeys. This is true. We just need to learn how to control our own minds, because if we don't, there's a good chance that somebody else would like to control your mind for you. This is where we're at. You see, the mental body emits emissions continuously with every word, with every thought. These are measurable in science. We call them ergs of energy. The human body, however adaptable, is primarily water and cells, pretty much a battery. We create this enormous brain energy. Then we have the cardio-electromagnetic energy of the heart, which is so powerful, it can ripple right through the universe. When you know how to combine the two, being a human being is a rather special. And so I think that other extraterrestrials would like to suppress that growth in us, suppress that unfolding. Maybe at one time they thought it was for our own good and that we might not be able to, but I think that it's time for humanity to really wake up and begin to look in the mirror and really see exactly what we're capable of and start to operate from that heart and mind connection.
Do these extraterrestrials that are conducting these abductions experience any emotions such as fear, and do they have any fears of anything?
I don't know about, now the mantis, or most of the collective conscious entities, fear the individuality of the human. To them, that's the scariest thing, is to be adrift, alone, unconnected to the whole. That freaks them out. So that can be used as a weakness. I hate to say it, but it's true. That would be a weakness that if we needed to use, that would be something. The little ones, I'll just tell you, if you have no fear, they just simply don't know what to do. When I was completely lucid and conscious in the presence of two gray extraterrestrials, I felt psychologically prepared for the situation. I had zero fear, none whatsoever. Might have been naive, but I had zero fear, none. And when I realized that my attempt at communication to them was being thwarted, they could care less. When I saw them like turn to each other, and I know they communicated over my head, telepathically, I'm sure. And they saw that I was totally conscious and unafraid. They quickly turned to each other, communicated, and in a flash of white light, a taller gray appeared, sort of to the boss, trying to make sure things were back on controls. I don't know if they, I don't, I startled them. Let's just say that. When we're lucid and psychologically prepared and have no fear whatsoever, they just don't know. They're out of their realm of ability to control us.
Now, is that why you found some of your patients have called out to Jesus, and that's actually ended the abduction experience? Is that because the person becomes less fearful, or they're connected to a higher dimension, or what's the reason for that?
I don't know why. I do know that about 20% of people who call out for help through Jesus Christ get that help. And I believe it's their own belief system. They believe now in this higher power, and they have no more fear because it's going to be taken care of. I did call out to Jesus at one point during an earlier experience with the gray. Didn't do anything for me. And I do believe that Jesus was a great soul. But I also believe that I needed to learn from the situation, and that I had to learn how to save myself. And in so doing, I've been able to show many others how to save themselves. You see, they create this hypnagogic state where the mind is awake, but the body is asleep, so like a sleep paralysis. And we're able to show people how to snap out of that by energetically moving their energy quickly to the left. I don't know if it secretes the awake hormone, but this snaps people out of that state of paralysis, and they're able to use their body. And this is a time when we become more conscious and lucid, that the extraterrestrials begin to back off a little, especially if we're not afraid.
Now, I know in some of your patients, you've had experiences where they regress to an experience with an extraterrestrial where it was forecasted that they were going to meet you at a certain point and be part of their journey and to assist. I know I've had Barbara Lamb on my show before, and she's been out here for our expo, and she's had a lot of those experiences as well. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, it's really beautiful. There are those people who believe they have a extraterrestrial soul family, and that they've asked for a sort of a heads up on their path. They meet and are able to assist where it's necessary. These people are mission oriented. They have a mission, they have duties, they have responsibilities that they share with the extraterrestrials. Sometimes it's within the awakening of humanity. Sometimes it is through these releasing of genetics into their care for their hybrid programs. But having these relationships with extraterrestrials, it can really be a positive thing in a person's life. It can bring you hope, guidance. It allows you to feel safe. And at the same time, pushing the reality challenges that most people have, thinking that we're all alone here without any help and abandonment. Yeah, a lot of these experiencers feel that when they connect to what they call their star family, lose these feelings of abandonment, but now gain this desire to go home. So this new feeling of loss begins to set in. So that's when we have to work on our ability for telepathic communication. I think that we all have the ability, and born naturally with the ability to communicate. I think it might have even been hinted at in the bibliography of Babylon where they said everybody spoke the same languages, and the gods that came to the earth at the time needed the division among the people to control them, and so they gave them all their own tongue. They would have to learn how to communicate with each other all over again. In other words, they suppressed their ability or blocked their ability to communicate telepathically. So I think now it's not something somebody has to go learn or develop. It's more like you have to move in and just remove the block and allow it to just flow. It's like the telepathic river has been dammed. And when we remove that dam, the telepathy flows naturally.
I'm sure you're familiar with Dolores Cannon and her books, and she talked about these 3 waves of human incarnations that were to prepare the Earth consciousness for a new, higher consciousness dimensional experience. And what you talked about was that these abductions were prearranged, that these souls agreed to come into physical incarnation so they could be abducted, I believe. Have you found that to be true in your research?
I love Dolores Cannon's work. I'm a huge fan of her quantum hypnosis. I think she was an amazing woman. I don't believe that we have a soul contract with graves. And any contract, now I'm not a soul attorney here, but I would think that a person should have recollection in multiple conscious minds. The superconscious, the conscious, and the subconscious mind would all be integrated and on the same page, something this important. I can't see that being fragmented in the mind, although it's a lovely thought. I don't believe it to be the case. And in my own situation with the grays, on any, would I or will I agree for them to harvest genetics from my body or my bloodline or any of my family members? Absolutely not. That is inappropriate. It is not what we are supposed to do. We don't need to create a new being to bring in your consciousness. What to do is break through the paradigm of reality and thought that we have now. Higher consciousness is already there. It again is just a matter of tapping into it, just like telepathy.
I'd like to move to a different topic now, one in which you are quite an expert as well. The Mandela Affect has become quite popular in our mainstream, even consciousness in recent months. Can you, for those people who are watching the show and may not be familiar with it, can you give us a little explanation of what the Mandela Affect is?
If you have no idea of it, the theory is that there are parallel universes on timeline very similar to ours, and that for some reason there is a flux within these timelines that have created either a bleed through or a convergence. Now just think of your radio station, and if you are on the right station, the message is loud and clear. If you go over, you're in another station. Go the other way, you're in another station. Just one frequency over. It's pretty much how parallel universes work. The idea, or theoretically, is that CERN, who have been around since about 1955, had created a large hadron particle collider. The idea was to create these ions and particles smashing at such speeds that they were able to duplicate what the universe was like right after the Big Bang. Now, the problem was that people thought that this could actually create a tear or a rip in the fabric of reality between the 2 dimensions. That a tear between the 2 dimensions allowed a bleed through that overlapped certain parts of our history, creating change. Is that possible? Possible, yeah, it is. The conscious mind, which is able to transcend both time and space, can have its memories from different perspectives. Now, astrophysicists back in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s told us that where we were in the universe was on the in the Milky Way galaxy, and then more precise, we were in the Sagittarius arm, which was an arm, a larger arm at the rim of the Milky Way galaxy. Today, science will show us that we are in fact in the Orion spur, that we are in the almost arm. It's almost an arm, it's still just a spur. And that this is where the planet is. So I remember back in the 90s, I had a t-shirt of the Milky Way galaxy and showed all the spiral of the galaxy. And on the outside of the rim, it said, "You are here." Now, that t-shirt would look incredibly different. That t-shirt would no longer be pointing at the Sagittarius arm. It would in fact be halfway between dead center and the exterior rim. That's where the Orion is. That's where we are. So I believe that something definitely is happening because we're seeing residual effects of two timelines. I've been able to get I'll go into the deep net, go into the deep dark net, and I've gone into the United States Patent Office full text and image database where I could pull up patent numbers and trademarks for products that they say never existed. Now, I'm a researcher, so of course I've done all the research, even using simple sites like logopedia.com. It'll tell you how long one logo has been being used. So I've been able to find the patent information on products such as Febreze, which was an air freshener, and the patent, it did spell it F-E-B-R-E-E-Z-E. There's been no rebranding, no new logo, no changes at all, but now we are seeing it spelled with only one E. The company themselves say nothing's changed. I've got the patent. It says Febreze. Where's the disconnect? So there has been something happening. And like I had just said just slightly earlier, it was only when I saw people being seriously upset by the fact that these changes were happening that I began to really go into deep research mode. One of the ones that really propagated my thinking that the Mandela Effect was true was the Wizard of Oz movie. Being born, raised, and educated in Canada, we had like 3 TV stations, and one was in French, okay? So there wasn't a whole lot of TV, and the Wizard of Oz would come on once a year, and the whole family, everybody's family, would watch the movie and pop popcorn, and it was a big deal. So I watched that movie, I can't tell you how many times. I've watched it all my life. And then when I saw that the scarecrow, upon entering the path to the haunted witch's castle where it says, "Haunted forest, I would turn back if I were you," he pulls out a gun. A gun? The scarecrow's packing heat? Who gave the brainless guy a gun? Now that upset me. And then I realized that the Tin Man, who had always had an axe and an oil can, now had those 2 items in addition to a 30-inch pipe wrench. So I ordered the VHS tape, one that was made prior to the ability to digitally enhance or change the movie. And he has a gun. It doesn't matter. So when we see movies like Star Wars, the iconic line of Luke, "I am your father," is no longer in the line, or that line is no longer in the movie. It's very difficult for people, but it's only when you can hear about it all you want. But it's when you go into your cabinet and take out your DVD of Star Wars and you play the one that you've had in your possession for 25 years, and it says, "No, I am your father," something's happening here. This isn't mismemory, because that's not how memory works. Mismemory doesn't work en masse, that we all share mismemories. Absolutely not. The Berenstain Bear one, those were books that I read to my children. The question when reading that book was it Berenstein or Berenstein? Never did it come up. Was it perhaps Berenstain? Now, I was able to find a 1980s Genesis video game that says Berenstein with the E, the way that we remember it. We see that in areas, now this is where it gets interesting, where there is sketchy Wi-Fi and very little cell phone reception, that we're able to find products that have that original spelling, like Fruit Loops, where it was spelled Fruit, the way that I remember it. And Captain Crunch was spelled Captain, not Cap apostrophe N. Both of those breakfast cereals, by the way, I was able to find the original patents, and it is spelled the way that I recall. So is there two timelines? Could they possibly be converging? I think that that's not out of the realm of possibilities when that parallel universes exist. Can we create a bleed through? Possibly. But now we have to look at corporations like CERN, whom we know that they're using D-wave quantum computing. And if there are parallel universes, and there's another Laurie and another Ethann and another everyone, and the closer we are, the more similar we are, the further away, the more different we are, these will be based on quantum possibilities of major decisions we made in our lives. So maybe I decided in this other one not to be a hypnotherapist, that I was going to be, a mainstream doctor. That could be one existence of a parallel timeline. But the bigger issue here is that, say, CERN is in both timelines, using this quantum computing at speeds which are just unbelievable. The possibility of these two computers beginning to talk is most probable, therefore creating some type of rogue artificial intelligence.
Now, you mentioned that scientists were saying we're now in the spur of the Orion part of the galaxy compared to Sagittarius previously, and Orion is actually closer to the center of the galaxy then?
Yes.
And does that imply that as we're getting closer to the center of the galaxy, that the consciousness is increased? So as being part of Sagittarius, being in the outer arm of the galaxy, perhaps our level of consciousness has shifted dramatically as well.
Yes, Ethan. That's exactly where I was going. That's exactly what I believe. I do believe that this is a consciousness thing. When we have to look at the human consciousness, when it can transcend space and time, when it exists clearly outside of the body, I think that the Mandela Affect is another wake-up call to bring us into the idea that we are multidimensional beings. Nothing speaks about multidimensional entities more than the Mandela Affect. So I think that our consciousness has shifted into this Orion spur, that in fact we have an alpha consciousness, and that some of us are choosing on an accelerated learning path, maybe, to be able to have these wake-up calls to sort of teach others about the multidimensionality. It's maybe not so important that maybe this G-wave quantum computing's gone rogue, or that CERN created a tear in the fabric of the dimensions. I think it's more important that we see that our consciousness is multidimensional, and that the Mandela Affect is actually allowing us to now remember two different levels of our consciousness.
Is it possible, based on a lot of the ancient prophecies, this was supposed to be a time when there could have been major cataclysms or dramatic earth changes as we move into a new future? Do you think that maybe the shift in dimensions that's put us closer to the center of the galaxy has maybe put us on a different timeline of experience where those things are no longer necessary for our evolution?
That's certainly possible. We're evolving, we look at some of these changes in the timeline. I'm personally trying to see if there's an encoded message. What are we looking at? What we're looking at is the dropping of an S in a lot of things, taking away the plural, pointing towards a singularity or a oneness. So possibly there is something like that in the movie Field of Dreams. Build it in, they will come. Now it's build it in, he will come. An interview with the vampire, one vampire instead of interview with a vampire, like just one of many. So that's what's sort of changing in the biblical changes. Right in Genesis, in the beginning it said, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth was void and without form. But now it reads in my own family Bible, heaven instead of heavens. There's no S. I noticed in the Lord's Prayer, where it says, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven, now reads in earth as it is in heaven. This is certainly pointing to a different direction of a simulation, because are we on the planet or in the planet? And wow, how did that change? But we also see another ancient bibliography texts where it says, know the truth in your heart and in your mind, because there'll be a day where the words and books and history changes.
I actually remember some of those, like you're saying, for example, Forrest Gump or Mr. Rogers. Also, there's one, right?
Yeah, Mr. Rogers in this neighborhood, a very specific neighborhood, like the Orion Spur neighborhood. So yeah, and I think that, I'll be honest with you, although I've researched it pretty extensively, the research part of however fun it is, really now looking at the research and creating different categories for it and trying to see what it is it's showing me. I know there's something there. I know there's something I'm missing. There's something else there. I know this because I had a dream recently, just within the last couple of nights, and I was researching when I tried to look at my whiteboard to write something on it. My eyes wouldn't open. They were stuck closed. And so, yeah, you don't have to be a great dream interpreter to understand what that means. There's something right in front of me that I'm not seeing. So I'm definitely looking harder at what the research is and what it might imply.
Why is it that some of us have a different memory of things than others? For example, some may I would imagine not very many people think the Forrest Gump quote was what it is now, or even the Star Wars one doesn't make a lot of sense. But there are some people who, and even I myself, sometimes I'm not sure which one is correct in some instances. Why is it that some of our memories are different than others?
Not exactly sure, but I will tell you, I asked my granddaughter, who's 7, if she knew the movie Snow White, and she said, of course. I said, oh, what does the queen say? She said, she says, magic mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all? I said, oh, is that right? Are you sure? And she said, wait, I don't know why I said that. No, she said, the queen says, mirror, mirror on the wall. I observed this. I didn't lead. I gently asked, are you sure? And when she checked in with herself, she said, no, I don't even know why I said that. A 7-year-old. So can our memories be changed? Yeah, they can. We actually have technology to suppress memory or create memory. And that's where it gets a little bit convoluted now, because we have to weigh into this Mandela Affect, this nefarious technology that we have that can manipulate the mind. So again, this is where I have to say, everybody needs to meditate. It's not hard. You don't have to twist yourself in a pretzel. It's nothing that you have to be adept at. You just practice a little bit every day. Just practice, because it will increase the gamma waves, fortifying your brain, allowing you to maintain your personal individuality as your consciousness is connected to all that is. And that's kind of important right now. You know, Ethan, you can see how this Mandela Affect can really get people upset. You know, I've seen people argue over sex in the city and sex and the city. Well, I never watched the show. Just wasn't something that would appeal to me. Probably the title just doesn't appeal to me in the least bit. Either title, frankly. But I do know that a neighbor of mine always watched it and talked about it all the time. And it was sex in the city. And she'd had the little perfume and the soaps, and it all said sex in the city. And in the background was the skyline of New York. But now they're saying it's sex and the city, which really doesn't even make sense, because it's like two plots. Okay, so, and that's what we see with this Mandela Affect is, again, a lot of them don't really make sense. Like the adult diaper, you know, I did care for an elderly person who lived to be over 100, and it was like a father to me. And I bought said product, Depends. I had to look at all the boxes and find the right size, and now the product is just Depend. Again, it doesn't make sense. You know, how I think the commercials were something like, you know, you're an adult. Are you going to need this? It depends. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. Better be safe. That was the idea of the product, not depend. Yeah, so again, it just throws us off our way of thinking. Yeah, but we do, something is happening. And I just think that the healthiest way to approach it is to just accept that the possibility of alternate timelines is there. Math shows us that. Entanglement physics shows us that. It's very easy to see that the existence of parallel universes is not that far-fetched. Now we're learning about the human consciousness. We can, transcend space and time. We can send telepathic messages. Well, now we're getting a little bit of evidence that the multidimensional ability of the mind has memory from a parallel universe. That in the alternate universe, spelling of things was slightly different. If it is a total convergence of the two timelines mixing, that's okay too. There'll be residual effects, and I would suspect that this is phase one. And that phase two would be larger effects, big changes, such as changes in the geography of the planet herself and the energetics of the planet, therefore affecting the biology, animals, flora, fauna, things like that.
So right now you're only seeing these effects on things like cereal boxes and commercials and TV shows, but you're saying...
People are saying that there are some anatomy changes, that the heart, you put your hand on your heart, it was always a little to the left. Just go to a baseball game. They play the national anthem, that's where your heart goes. But now they're saying, no, it's dead center. I practiced some martial arts in my youth and learned some blocking. And I remember being taught a kidney shot block. That if somebody had to block a kidney shot, which is a little bit hard because they were in the lower left, right about where my hands would have been. Now they're saying they're much higher and that the rib cage looks different. But I'm not a medical doctor and I can't thoroughly speak to the anatomy. I can only speak to my own personal changes. I grew up in Windsor, Ontario. That's where my mother and family still are. And I just recently learned that there is a 15-foot weed in southern Ontario that can burn you if you touch it and blind you if you get it in your eyes. Now, I lived out on a farm for a while, staying at my grandmother's house quite a bit, and lived in the city. And I'll tell you, never at one time did anybody say, hey, watch out for that 15-foot weed that can blind or burn you. So now all of a sudden, that is there. My mom, born and raised in Windsor, has never left. She's lived in the city pretty much her entire life, into her 70s. And she said she never heard of it, but there it is in our books now. That to me is extremely interesting. Even people are saying that how Florida comes off the continent of the United States. They say it used to sort of point down more like more closer to between 5 and 5:30. And now they're saying it points like straight down, like up and down, closer to like 6 o'clock, 5:30 and 6 o'clock. Yeah, and it was more like 5 o'clock before. So it looks like they said some changes. I understood that somebody just said we've just discovered a new marsupial in Australia, where we'd only had 2. The marsupial, the great difference is their ability to carry their offspring in a pouch after birth. And so now there's 3 marsupials. So these things, it's difficult to begin to do the research because we're only going to have a certain memory of some things. So with the Mandela Affect, for me personally, I like to really research the things where I feel that I am 100% confident in my belief. And that's the thing also with the Mandela Affect. Listen, if you believe it one way and somebody believes it another way, just accept that both can exist. There's no right or wrong. It's a matter of alpha consciousness being able to remember or recall.
I've heard you say that there used to be an island next to Australia that's no longer there as well, correct?
Yes, I absolutely remember learning this. Was to the west of Australia, and I remember exchange teacher by the name of Miss Keiston, who had come from the United Kingdom to Windsor, Ontario, had been to that island when she was visiting Australia, and she showed it to us on the map. And she was one of my favorite teachers. I just excelled with her. So, and I've also been able to find 2 TV shows. Again, all of a sudden I was like, just had this insight to play a particular show, which I did. I put it on, and it was the Andy Griffith Show. And he sent up into his room, little Andy closes the door, and there on the desk is the globe. Australia is showing, and there is the little island. It's also been able to screenshot 2 other movies from the 80s that show this. Interestingly enough, the Malaysian airline that went missing a couple of years back now, they started the search from where the last tick of the black box was. It was right where that island was. So maybe it's another terror area. Maybe the plane landed in another dimension.
Interesting. And what so you've done a lot of extensive research. What are some of the more compelling pieces of evidence you found, other than what you've already mentioned, that validate the Mandela Effect?
Well, there is, like I said, the Genesis game, because that's a physical thing that we can hold on to that still says the previous name, the Berenstain Bears. That and the United States Patent Office. And I was just back I was on DuckDuckGo, which is one of the browsers. I don't use Google or Yahoo or any of the main ones. They're just too limited. So when you go into the deeper net in one of those types of browsers, you're getting a lot more information. But I went into the United States Patent Office just yesterday and was quite startled to see that I was being blocked. My access in, and I've been there many times, they've now changed their program. I hope it's not because of me, but the program is now changed. It's beginning and increasingly more difficult to find those residual effects that show us. But the best thing is to really, I'm going to tell people, just trust yourself. Trust yourself. Don't let yourself be swayed. Be strong in your mind and body. Know what you know. And if you don't know it, then don't focus on that one. It's not important. It's not worth the argument. Just trust yourself. Know yourself and trust yourself. That's really the most important takeaway with the Mandela Effect. And now begin to, Google, or not Google, but browse some parallel dimension mathematical equations and so on, and begin to learn a little bit about how incredible a human is and what, in fact, we are capable of, because we are using such a small amount of what we can truly do.
When you mentioned Febreze earlier, you had actually gone into the patent office and found the original Febreze with the 2 E's, but the company said that didn't exist?
Yeah, Procter & Gamble owns it. I've got like 8 pages printed out on it because they break down every chemical in it, and definitely Febreze. Now it either reads Febreze or Febreze, because the double E there, without the other E, it doesn't say Febreze. It's very interesting. But yeah, I have that evidence.
You mentioned the importance of meditation in order to produce more delta waves. Are you suggesting that delta waves prevent mind control?
No, gamma waves.
I'm sorry, gamma waves.
Yeah, I'm suggesting that they strengthen your mind. They fortify your mind by all means. They do. And with this, you have the ability to begin to start with your own physical manifestations of blocking specific energies. Being able to move into the body, scanning it, feeling, so you really know yourself. So you can identify when a message is being sent to you that's not your own true thought. And I have experienced it when I was writing a chapter for my book on psychotronics. It was about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and I was home alone in the house. It was really dark and creepy. This is a really old house, and everything creaks. But I'm working on this chapter, and all of a sudden I hear loud in my mind, "You have no business writing on psychotronics." Well, I actually paused for a second and thought, I said, well, maybe that's true. And I just kept on working. And within another minute, I got another negative message that was rather self-defeating. I closed my laptop, walked down out of my office, down the hall into my bedroom, and by the time I sat on my bed, maybe within 5 minutes of the first message I received, I totally was wide awake, 100% lucid, and I said right out loud, very loudly, "Not in a million years would I say that or think that. That was not me." And it hasn't happened since. And I think that because I sort of received it because I was in that zone of working, very easy to drop a message in at that point. But when I rejected it as not my true self, which it wasn't, I believe I was at that point a victim of the very thing I was researching. They know where you are, websites where you're getting your information. It's not a big secret.
It sounds like what you're saying is that certain individuals, either through meditation or some other means of elevating consciousness, are able to prevent mind control techniques. So we can't really blame the masses for being the masses because they are actually being manipulated by mind control, right. And they have no control over it, whereas those people who are more awake actually are functioning in a whole nother level of awareness.
Right, and I would never blame the masses, but I would ask them to begin to just sort of to take responsibility. Start looking at things like everything that's happening to you might be because of you. And and then they'll stop blaming, right? When we can begin to sort of take responsibility, say, oh, if this is good or not good, but we're going to work on it or get through this, or, then we're changing big energy. So yeah, maybe the masses are mind controlled because aren't they programmed to think that if they get a good job, they'll get a lot of money so they can have a nice car and live in a big house, so they can just be on this perpetual cycle of consumption and producing and consuming, and it's not healthy, and it's all external. Certainly we have to work for a living, but we don't have to live to work, and that's the shift. People are not doing things that they love. They're just doing things for all the wrong reasons, for silver and gold. They're bought and sold. It's just they're not seeing the truth of what could be, and it far supersedes anything that's monetary.
Do you believe that we share a collective timeline? So, for example, right now, maybe there are two timelines colliding, and which is what's producing this Mandela Effect. But is it possible that each human being is on their own subtly different timeline that we create of our own intention and focus?
Oh, yeah. I think we're powerful manifestors. Each and every one of us, what we feed with our thoughts grows. And we create all the time. We may have a limited belief system, but unless we choose to self-correct and open ourselves into other areas, and that's what we got to get people to do. We got to get them to start thinking independently. Yeah, they have their own timeline, but we're still in this together. We're still all cosmically connected, and we all still have to operate from love. So we have more in common than we have that separates us. So when we begin to see what we have in common and begin to work from that, whatever timeline we happen to be on, we're all intended. It's what our intentions are moving in the right direction. That they're for everybody, that it's not self-serving, it's not an individual. We're a group. We have a collective unconscious that we can tap into. We have resources. We just have to get off of this cycle of being programmed or sitting in front of the Black Mirror magic with a remote control, because you are only remotely in control, and their programs are definitely programs of how you should behave and react to certain stimuli in society.
Does this Mandela Effect then imply that we have, so essentially we have control over our own existence, our own human experience? How does someone go about managing or taking control of their own experience through meditation, or have you learned anything from this research that would give you more concrete or tangible advice on that?
Yeah, I'm going to just say it again. All of it is putting us back on that path of a meditation so that we can move through the cycle of self-acceptance and self-awareness, self-love, and then mastery of self. That's when we begin to master the self. And then we move into that self-actualization. We're seeing the physical manifestations of our thoughts, and we take responsibility for we're actually creating the environment in which we live. And we can do this as a group, or we can do it individually to service our own needs. That's kind of the way people are doing it. When we get together, though, in meditation groups, we can affect change at a greater level. The mind, propelled by the heart, can manifest quite rapidly, especially in these changing times.
So this could even be beneficial, for example, if somebody had some sort of childhood psychological trauma, to perhaps maybe in a meditative state go back and alter that reality, and maybe even come to some awareness that it didn't occur?
Well, not that it didn't occur, because they have a memory of it. So in hypnosis, if you had a childhood trauma, we would go back, regress to that age, and then we would rescue the inner child with the wisdom of the adult, providing security, hope, and safety, giving the child tools and skills to develop, to work within, because the emotional reaction of an adult is coming from the inner child. And if that child is wounded and reactory, then the adult is going to be that way in life. And so it's important that we secure the inner child, allowing it to feel safe and loved and emotionally secure so that the adult can do that. We don't want to change it so that it never happened. We want to heal it so that they can handle it.
And you've done this and found that that's very beneficial then?
I've been doing inner child work for years. Very beneficial in healing those old wounds. It allows you to have a perspective, and it also teaches a lot of compassion and sympathy and kindness, because as an adult, if we were to just sort of for a minute use our imaginations and pretend that we're sitting beside our little child, and maybe they're 6 or 7 years old, and we begin to see them and feel them, and they can see us. We're all grown up. Not only did we survive, but we thrived. You know, this creates a connectedness in the psyche of the individual. If there's no wounds, we need to heal. Everybody needs to heal. I mean, we need to heal that inner child. There are multiple aspects to the psyche of the human, you know, the inner child after they're secure. The rebel might come out, and the rebel might be too bad, I can do whatever, you know. Well, the rebel, all of these, you know, different aspects of the mind are very important to the survival of the self, you know. The rebel's just protecting us, giving us our freedom. You know, we just have to, you know, calm them all and heal the wounds, and we integrate our full personality on this path of actualization and mastery. We do it in hypnosis all the time, which is why it's so incredibly powerful. We bypass that conscious mind, that critical mind that says it's true or not true, or that it's good or that it's bad. We move into the subconscious memory where there's no firewall between the conscious and the subconscious mind. There's no, once we subdue the critical mind and everything goes into the subconscious mind, it's not saying is it right or wrong. It's just saying it is. It's up to us how we're going to emotionally react to it. And the emotions, you know, E in math is energy in motions. It's just where the energy is to a specific situation. We just integrate all aspects of the self so that the adult can be secure and empowered, productive, at peace. You know, really, it's the ability to be at ease in the mind and body. You know, we don't live that long, you know, 100 years if we're lucky. We're having this experience for a very long time, not even as long as most trees, especially in my neighborhood. Trees are 100, 200 years old, way older than I'm going to be in this body on this planet. So while we're here, you know, it's really not about making money. It's about understanding how we are, how we develop, incorporating the aspects of self into the whole.
Are there some people who are not able to be hypnotized?
So they say, but that's because they don't want to be. People are hypnotized all the time without even realizing it. You know, if you're watching TV and you've got the light, the sound waves, and then they've got you emotionally. If you find yourself reacting emotionally, you're laughing, you're crying, you're mad, and you're watching something that's not true, it's not real, you're reacting to it from the subconscious mind because you're not using your filter. You're not going, oh, this isn't real, I'm not going to cry. You're sucked right in. The conscious mind is diminished. The subconscious mind is now open and receptive to receiving this experience, and you're being brainwashed. You'll see in marketing and media that they use words that we use in hypnosis all the time, or imagery for the words that we'll use. They'll show blue skies with clouds drifting, because drift separates the conscious and the subconscious, calms down the conscious mind. It lets it drift. There's nothing for it to do, no work, just drift. Then the subconscious mind becomes receptive. Next thing you know, you're buying Tide because it'll make your shirts whiter. And you didn't even want to buy Tide. But this is basically how it works. And I know back in 2014, the rules on subliminal advertising and marketing and media were lifted to a huge degree, where there's not as many restrictions as there once was.
Is there anything that we can do to prevent our susceptibility to subliminal marketing?
Don't watch TV. Turn it off. Or control the TV that you watch instead of being controlled by it. Watch TV through a streaming device that doesn't have commercials. That's what we do in this household. And we've also got an intention that we don't really watch TV so much as observe TV. So if it's something for entertainment, we're going in to be entertained, and we're fully aware of it. Certainly not going to get sucked into what they want me to do. And that's the difference between watching and observing TV. You know, my husband paused the television one night in between two scenes, and there was a subliminal word, the full size of the screen, in bold letters, and the word was sex. And he was blown away, astonished, couldn't believe it, heard about it many times, believed it to be true, but never actually was able to stop it right in that moment, right in between where the word fully surfaced. So it exists.
So basically what you're saying is you're an observer of your experience, and so you can essentially observe yourself watching TV.
In a way, yes, so that you're aware of what it's doing to you, what emotional strings it's pulling, what it's making you believe, what it's making you feel good about. Just check in with the emotions that are being triggered deliberately. Why do they want you to feel this or that? What is the purpose? What is the intent?
We touched on early in our conversation about the transition from third dimension to fifth dimension. What evidence are you seeing that we're actually moving to a fourth dimension?
Well, NASA scientists tell us that we are moving into the fourth dimension. And my own personal experiences show me that. And the planet is experiencing the Mandela Affect. Certainly something is happening.
What are some of the characteristics of the fourth dimension that either you're seeing already or that we would be looking to observe as we head further into that?
They say that we're in the higher third, moving into the lower fourth dimension right now. I'm not sure what people will see other than the fact that they'll have every opportunity possible to have their emotions reflected back to them, so that they'll be able to experience equanimity, so that they'll know how to be in emotional control. It's very important. And, you know, before I even fully understood the definition of the word, I heard it loud and clear, just enter my mind. And I went and looked it up in the dictionary. And within a couple of minutes after that, my phone had rang. And I was given some very, very bad news that really, if I wouldn't have just been tuned into making sure that I was able to control my emotions, it could have been a very difficult time for me. So it's all about the ability to control our emotions. It's again, controlling ourselves. It's not allowing others to do it for us.
Now, in the fourth dimension, there is less time, right? Time's less of an influence, at least from my understanding. And if that's the case, then thoughts manifest into reality faster, I would think.
Exactly. From what I understand, technically speaking, it's a lower, longer wave. But with that, time actually moves faster. But in here on the Earth, it's really almost painstakingly slow in the third dimension. So I'd imagine by the higher fourth dimension, we'd be at the maximum manifesting as we move into the lower fifth at that point. I'm not sure how long each dimension takes, because I do know this. In those states of consciousness, there is no sense of time at all. No sense of time. No feeling of time or space, really. It's an absolutely indescribable feeling of just being without a sense of time.
So if there is no sense of time, then could there really be a physical incarnation? I mean, in the matter sense that we've become used to in the third dimension, and in that sense, could people essentially live indefinitely?
Well, in one body?
Well, essentially, if there is no time and we're transitioning from the third to the fourth, would we not continue to exist in the same body but at a higher vibration?
Not sure. Not sure how much of a body or how different the body will be. I think by the time we hit the fifth dimension, everything will have changed so much that we'll choose at this point to be embodied or to not be embodied. That we'll have full understanding of ourself and of our consciousness, and that we won't need a body to verify or prove it. It'll be our choice. Manifest whatever life you desire at this point. If you desire a life where you're a rock star, then you can experience that. If you want to desire a life where you're in the higher vibration, moving from one planet to the other, then you'll probably be able to do that too. There will be no limitations. I mean, we're very limited right now, very limited in our ability to even think larger. Again, with the ability for a multidimensional existence, we have to begin to think in terms, what might that be like for us? What might it be like to have a memory of a different timeline that some people that's happening to some people right now? Right now, in this moment, people are experiencing in-depth relationships with off-planet beings. Not all of the beings are extra-dimensional. I suspect that some of them are interdimensional, moving from timeline. See, this is my problem with the Mandela Effect, is one thing. The Mandela Effect seems to allow the consciousness to go into parallel universes. I believe the ascension process is not parallel. It is up, moving up in a spiral. These parallel universes would just keep us in the same time. We're in the same time. It would be like a time loop, just in a different dimension, being played out. It's a little bit different in each way, but still stuck in that third dimension, that same energy. So that's the problem in my heart and mind with the Mandela Effect. If that's just what feels unsettling to me, not necessarily a problem, but just something that's unsettling to me, is that it is moving in the wrong direction. The ascension path to me is like this spiral of energy moving upwards, and not this linear time loop of moving from one dimension to the next, as long as all the dimensions are still third dimension.
You mentioned emotions are becoming more intense as we move into the lower fourth. Is that because obviously if our ability to manifest faster is increasing as we move into the fourth and toward the fifth, I would imagine we want to have better control of our emotions. Otherwise, we'll be manifesting all kinds of disastrous things.
Exactly. That's exactly why we need to be on this path of awareness and development into self-actualization prior to taking those steps on that ascension path, because it'll give us the opportunity to be in control of our emotions so that we don't manifest negativity, so that we don't harbor feelings of jealousy or insecurity or a negative competitiveness. You know, these things are not going to aid us. Those are feelings that will create more negative feelings, sadly. So, but an empowered person moving into this space doesn't feel superior or inferior. And with that, there's nothing to fight about. There's no war. There's full acceptance of however you want to manifest, and whatever color you want to manifest, whatever size you want to manifest. Everyone can just be. We will focus our attention on things that we share, such as love of our families and so forth, love of our planet, love of the cosmos, love of our opportunity to unfold. There's so much more that we have in common than we have that's different. Really, the differences are minor. So in order to get into that ascension path and have that consciousness expansion, it needs to be with a pure heart.
Now, how does one do that? Obviously, the majority of human beings struggle very much with their emotions, and the mainstream mindset is very much about self-interest. So how does one move to that, or is it just simply being done to us because our emotions are becoming more intense and we have to deal with it?
Well, emotions are a huge energy, and if we're not acting out from them and hurting others, and we use them to channel positive, clean energy into ourselves, there's just all kinds of things that we can do. But people have the opportunity to control their emotions. Emotional control can be done through attending guided meditations or empowerment workshops. I'm huge into the empowerment workshops because what this does is it allows you to love yourself fully with all the imperfections. It's all right. And when you can do that for real, you can love all of the imperfections in another. So you're not taking them personally. Somebody hurts you and you're coming from an empowered point. What your thought is hurt people, hurt other people. So if they're deliberately hurting you, then you can see that it's not your issue. And with that, there's really no pain. When it's a deliberate attempt, it's almost childish.
Now, with all the research you've done and your background in the extraterrestrial conversation, as well as the Mandela Effect, are you and all the many people you come into contact with in your work, are you feeling that we are moving toward a future of higher consciousness and an age of enlightenment, or do you think we're still in a precarious place as far as which timeline we may move toward?
Are smack in the middle of transition. We are transitioning into that higher way right now. And we are experiencing growing pains. That's all. It's okay. It's going to hurt a little bit. It's like a little child getting in a new tooth. It's growing pains. You got to fall before you walk. And it's all right. Right now, we're walking. In a moment, we're going to be flying. And that's how it's going to happen. We just have to understand that we are transitioning. This is the transitional time. We're at that major point in history. We're moving from one huge cosmology of energy into another. And we are receiving it as personal empowerment. So we don't feel threatened or inferior. There's no need for this. We're all in this together. And if one of my friends is having a hard time and acting out, I don't blame or shame them. I support and nurture them. And then I teach them how to support and nurture themselves. It's really about healing. It's about us all healing. And when we heal, we're not going to be acting out from those areas of negativity. But I'll tell you, I have hope. Never, ever underestimate the human spirit. Just watch what we can do. When there's a tragedy, we're the first to jump in and save our neighbor or our friend. We can do great things, and we will continue to, and it's only going to get better. And I'm telling you this because in my heart, I saw that golden planet. I know that that's ultimately where we'll be. So I have total faith in humanity. I have hope, and I have confidence that we're moving in the right direction. And if we fall, we're going to get back up again. You know, my personal family motto is, if you get knocked down 7 times, you get up 8. So that's what we'll do.
Could you share with our viewers all the different things that you're doing? And I know you do a lot of events. You were just at the Conscious Life Expo, where they can get in touch with you to get involved and maybe even book sessions or find out where you'll be speaking next.
Yes. My next event is February 28th through March 5th on Kona, Hawaii. And I am teaching along with Holly Cook, a shaman. We are having an Embrace Your Divine Feminine Energy Empowerment Retreat for women. We are going to show them how to step into their power, how to find their voice, how to speak their truth, and how to live at ease in the body as they move on to their path of actualization. It's a pleasure and an honor to be allowed to assist these women on their journey. And I couldn't be happier to be doing it with Holly Cook, who's a wonderful woman and a woman of power. And she is a shaman, and she's helping the women heal as they come into their power as well. After that, I believe I'll be in Sedona, Arizona at an Awakening Expo, where I'll be speaking on expanded consciousness and how to take the 9 steps that I've laid out on my plan to ascension, the 9 steps to ascension. Then I will be emceeing with other fantastic MCs at Contact in the Desert at the Joshua Tree Resort in Joshua Tree, California. And there's lots more. Just check out my website, trueyouhypnotherapy.com or divinefemininegoddessretreats.com.
Are you on social media as well?
I am. Hey, find my True You Hypnotherapy page and give that a like, because I'm really having a hard time getting people there. I am on, you can follow me at Laurie's True You on Twitter, and Laurie McDonald on Facebook, and True You Hypnotherapy on Facebook.
Well, it's been a real pleasure having you with me today and speaking about all these very fascinating subjects. I'll be keeping in touch and probably have you back on the show again in the future.
I would love to. Thank you so much, Ethan. It's just been fantastic.
Thank you. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Wake and Empower TV with my special guest, Laurie McDonald. Join me next week as we speak with another incredible individual who's standing on the leading edge and changing the world.